Hi, I'm Delith Nadawalko here with your daily English news. Abiy Ahmed's government targets civilian and airstrikes on Mekelle city as his forces suffer defeats on the battlefront. Tigray fighters vow to end Abiy's final offensive immediately. The United Nations is calling for a halt to fighting in the northern region of Tigray. Abiy Ahmed's government conducts 2 rounds of airstrikes in the city of Mekelle, killing 3 civilians and injuring several others. According to Tigray TV, the first airstrikes were conducted at around 9 a.m. this morning at Mesebo on the outskirts of the city, killing 3 civilians and again injuring several others. Abiy Ahmed's government, whose forces and coalition partners suffered successive defeats on the battlefront at the hands of the Tigrayan forces, recently carried out the second round of air bombings at around noon at Dihaqi Market in the center of Mekelle city. Al Jazeera also reported of the air bombardment, citing witnesses and 2 humanitarian workers. Kindeya Gabrahiwet, one of the Tigray's authorities, told the Associated Press a market was bombed on a busy day and many people were wounded. Another resident, speaking on the condition of anonymity for fear of retaliation, said the first airstrike occurred just outside the city and 3 children from the same family were killed. The resident said at least 7 people were wounded in the second attack, which also damaged a hotel extremely badly. Reports from the Idle hospital indicate those injured by the airstrikes are currently being hospitalized. And Mekelle City administration was warned residents to avoid gathering in one place to mitigate the effects of the air bombings any less. Ethiopia's government spokesperson, Lagasa Tulu, denied launching any attack, saying, "Why would the Ethiopian government attack its own city? Mekelle is an Ethiopian city," he told Reuters. But Reuters reported that it received information from an aid worker and a doctor in the region who confirmed that there had been an assault on the city as confirmed. A diplomat in Ethiopia shared pictures of what he said was the aftermath, including pools of blood and smashed windows. All Reuters sources asked to not be named, and Tigray forces said the aerial assaults were designed to inflict civilian casualties. Monday is market day in Mekelle, and intentions is all too palpable, a member of Tigray Armed Forces Central Command Getachew Reda said on his Twitter. The last time the Ethiopian military carried out an airstrike near Mekelle was in June, when a market in Togoga outside of the city was hit and at least 64 civilians were killed. Soldiers for hours blocked medical teams, and responding to victims are not available either. The Tigray Armed Forces on Saturday claimed to have major advances in a week of renewed heavy fighting that began on the 10th of October. Tigray Armed Forces said its forces had captured many more soldiers and destroyed several divisions of the Ethiopian army. Getachew Reda, a senior member of the Tigray Armed Forces Central Command, claimed their forces had totally destroyed the whole eastern command of the National Defense Forces, including more divisions that were deployed as reinforcements. Getachew vowed that the Tigrayan forces will end Abiy's final and decisive offensive in a matter of days or at max a couple of weeks. Abiy Ahmed's dream to capture Tigray and wipe out its people is all but over, he said. His forces are crumbling like house of cards, and it remains to be seen if he can lie his way out of what we believe is a total defeat and a miraculous hold on to his seat, Getachew added. And the Tigray Armed Forces on Monday last week said that the Ethiopian army, alongside allied Amhara special forces, had launched a ground and aerial offensive in a bid to reinvade Tigray and called on the international community to condemn the attack. On the morning of the 11th of October, the Ethiopian military, with the support of Amhara special forces, launched coordinated offensives on all fronts, Tigray Armed Forces said, adding that the large scale of offensive is backed by the heavy weapons, tanks, rockets, drones, and fighter jets. Getachew added, Abiy Ahmed's so-called final offensive is in full swing now. Our forces are holding their ground, and more in the Wagalta, Graraga, Wargasa, and Haro fronts. The nearly 1-year-long conflict between the Ethiopian rivals has claimed the lives of tens of thousands of people and left about 5.2 million people in need of emergency food assistance. According to the United Nations, hundreds of thousands of people are currently in famine-like conditions. Blockage on the fuel, medical supplies, and closure of all banking services, coupled with electricity communication blackout, has worsened and the humanitarian crisis in the Tigray region. U.S. President Joe Biden, in a meeting with Kenyan counterpart Uhuru Kenyatta on Friday, reiterated the need for a peaceful resolution to the bloody conflict that's currently taking hold of Ethiopia. A few days ago, government of Tigray said it was ready to have a sit-down on a table with Abiy Ahmed's government to find a peaceful way out of this civil war. But the group accused Addis Ababa of repeatedly rejecting calls for mediation, and Ethiopia has repeatedly ruled out negotiations with the Tigray armed forces. The United Nations is calling for a halt to fighting in the northern Ethiopia amid reports of the intensification of the conflict to ensure that aid workers can reach all people in the dire need of help, UN humanitarians said on Friday. The Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said workers continue to deliver assistance to people across 3 northern regions despite highly challenging circumstances. The northmost Tigray, more than 90% of the people need aid. An estimated 400,000 people are living in famine-like conditions, the office said. And aid operations continue to face significant challenges as well. The office said the lack of cash, fuel, and other supplies is disrupting the response in multiple areas, and the UN humanitarian partners were only able to reach about 17% of the people who should have received food assistance, or 145,000 of the 870,000 people in need. The reduction of water, trucking services in central and northern western zones impacted more than 472,000 people, as reported by OSHA. We are currently concerned that much-needed medical supplies continue to block from Tigray. 9 trucks are carrying medicines and have been awaiting approval to proceed into Tigray since the beginning of August. OSHA said 640,000 people in Amhara and 72,000 people in Afar have received food assistance since the beginning of August. Catherine Tai, the U.S. Global Trade Representative, said Washington would soon decide to Ethiopia's status under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, an agreement which gives its duty-free access to the United States. Reports coming back to us through official channels and civil society are not encouraging, she said. What is happening in Ethiopia is humanitarian crisis, added Tai, referring to fighting in the northern Ethiopia and deepening famine in the region of Tigray. Ethiopia exported about $237 million worth of goods in duty-free to the United States under the AGOA in 2020, according to the U.S. Commerce Department. Any suspension would deal a major blow to Ethiopia's economy, which is already under the immense pressure from the coronavirus pandemic and the 11-month-old conflict inflation of the nearly 35%. Bilena Siyom, the Prime Minister's spokeswoman, previously said the suspension would take about 1 million jobs from the nation of 109 million people. AGOA gives sub-Saharan African nations duty-free access to the United States if they meet certain eligibility requirements, such as eliminating barriers to the U.S. trade and investments and making progress towards political pluralism. That wraps up our news for the day. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.